Getting into bed and not feeling sleepy is one of the most frustrating things. You end up lying there, tossing and turning, counting down the hours until you have to get up. And what's so annoying about this is the more you try, the harder it seems to become. And then going to bed seems to be the least relaxing thing that you do in the day. It ends up being a place that's associated with effort, and that is not what we want when it comes to sleeping well. So in this video, I'm going to be teaching you about one of the core systems that determines how sleepy you feel at the end of the day, so that you can make sure that you're working with it instead of against it. By the end of this, you will have learned ways to make sure that your eyes are heavier by the time that you get to bed, and that'll make it easier to get to sleep and stay asleep, get good quality, peaceful sleep that we're all looking for. And what is double exciting is I get to use props for this video, which I'm very, very much looking forward to. So for those who don't know me, I'm Tommy. I'm a professional sleep talker. I run workshops for businesses and communities, helping people unlock their full potential of their minds and their bodies through the power of sleep. Just a quick note and then we'll get cracking. Before you watch this one, it's really important that you understand what a circadian rhythm is and how to make sure that you make the most out of yours. Because if all of that's out of sync, then it can override everything that we're going to be speaking about today. So if you're not already following a consistent sleep schedule, going to sleep and waking up at the same time every day, I'd really recommend watching my previous video on circadian rhythm to get brushed up on that before you proceed with this one. I'll put a link in the caption below. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. Every time that you use energy throughout the day, your body produces something called adenosine. And adenosine tells your brain how sleepy you should feel. This buildup is something that we call sleep pressure. The more adenosine you've got pumping about, the higher the sleep pressure. The less adenosine, the lower the sleep pressure. The higher your sleep pressure, the more you'll feel like a sleepy sausage, and the quicker you'll be able to get to sleep, and the deeper and more restorative that sleep will be. Then throughout the night, that sleep pressure reduces, those adenosine levels drop, so you wake up in the morning feeling less sleepy. But if you try to get to sleep when you've got low sleep pressure, when you've got too little adenosine in your system, then it's going to feel a lot harder to get to sleep, and that sleep will be less restorative and more fragmented because of it. Now, this is the exciting bit where I get to use props. I'm so easily pleased. So this is how I think of sleep pressure. I like to imagine that there's a container in your brain. Throughout the day, there's a tap slowly filling it up with adenosine. And the fuller it gets, the heavier you feel. Which makes the phrase heavy-headed make even more sense. I think we've all been there, haven't we? Especially on public transport, I seem to find myself just going, whoa, like that. Very embarrassing. Anyway, by the end of the day, that weight should be pulling you into sleep. And then throughout the night, that container gets tipped out. Simple. So if you want to make sure that you feel sleepy at the end of the day, you need to make sure that that container is nice and heavy. But how do you make sure that that happens? Well, I shall fill you in on the educational side, and then we shall finish off with some very clear guidance on what I would say was best practice. So the first place that I'd start, if you want to make sure that your container is nice and heavy by the end of the day, is by simply giving it enough time to fill up. Now, what I'm about to say is probably going to frustrate a few people. I hope you don't hate me at the end of this, but lions play a huge factor in this. They take up a chunk of time out of your day where you can't build up that sleep pressure. For example, people struggle a lot on a Sunday because lions are quite frequent on a Sunday. Let's say you lie in for 3 hours. That's taking up 3 hours of time where you could be filling up with sleep juice. Sleep juice. Definitely not the right word, but I'm going to stick with it. I quite like that. Anyway, the less sleep juice that you got in there, you've missed out 3 hours worth of it. You're going to find it harder to get to sleep and stay asleep because of it, which is often why people sleep pants on a Sunday, wake up on a Monday morning feeling rubbish as well. Also, other than lions, we are built to sleep anywhere from 7 to 9 hours. We're all a little bit different. So if you're sleeping more than that 9 hours, unless you're doing a great amount of exercise or there is medical reasons behind it, you might be sleeping more than you need. And therefore you could sleep a little bit less, build up more sleep pressure, and then be able to get to sleep and sleep more deeply because of it. And that frees up some time to live your life, which is a double win. But then on the other side of things, if you're sleeping less than 6 hours, let's say, sleep pressure likely isn't what is causing your sleep difficulties, because that won't actually give your container enough time to empty fully. So you end up with a backlog of adenosine the next day, which is going to carry on to the next night. The only way that sleep pressure could still be a problem in that instance is if something's interfering with it, for example, caffeine or naps, but we'll get onto that in a few minutes. Another way to increase sleep pressure is to speed up the rate at which adenosine is produced. You see, the more you exert energy, the more adenosine is produced. So simply by doing things that take effort can boost those levels. Exercise is the most effective way to do this. Going for a walk, a run, a gym session, anything that takes movement. And mental effort helps too. So cracking on with some work, solving some puzzles, making a YouTube video. It's less effective than physical effort, but it still does make a difference. I like to think of this as if you're turning the tap up for a bit. Gives you a nice little boost. This is why you often sleep like a log after a busy day, because you've been mounting up lots of sleep pressure. So we've spoken about a couple of ways to increase sleep pressure. Now I'm going to tell you about 2 ways that actually decrease sleep pressure. It's really important that you know about these things. So yeah, if you're too sleepy, you can decrease it, but also to make sure that you don't decrease it too much and then have worse sleep at the end of the night because of it. And the first one is something that we've already touched on. Sleep. When you sleep, your adenosine levels drop. So by napping through the day, that is going to have the same effect, which is super handy if you're flagging and really need to recharge. But if that gets too near bedtime, it can be detrimental to your sleep quality. It can mean that you take longer to get to sleep. And that's not really what we're aiming for. And the second thing that's good to know about is caffeine. Caffeine is a cheeky little thing. Because it's a similar molecule to adenosine, it does a fantastic job of getting in the way. So technically, caffeine doesn't remove adenosine. It just blocks your brain from sensing it. So you might have a lot of sleep pressure and then you have a coffee and all of a sudden you don't feel tired anymore. That caffeine is masking the adenosine. It's getting in the way, even though you are really very tired. I think of it like some of the contents of the container has been poured into another container for a bit. Sleep pressure feels low temporarily, your head feels lighter, and then as that caffeine wears off, your brain can start to sense more of that adenosine again. And this is where timing matters. You want that caffeine to have worn off as much as possible before you get to bed. Otherwise, it can trick your brain into thinking it's not that tired and therefore it won't get to sleep as quickly or sleep as deeply. And the dangerous thing with this is if you don't sleep that well, you're going to wake up the next day feeling more tired, be more reliant on caffeine. And then that can turn into a vicious cycle where you drink caffeine too late, sleep badly again, wake up the next day and need even more caffeine to get through it. So that's the end of the educational stuff. Let's summarize what we've covered, and then I'm going to give you my top tips to take away. The higher your sleep pressure, the quicker and deeper that you'll sleep. The lower your sleep pressure, the more awake you'll feel, which is fab through the day, but can be dangerous when it comes to bedtime. And there are 3 ways that you can manage your sleep pressure. You can fill it up by simply being awake, and then that filling up can be faster if you put more effort into things. And then if you want to lower your sleep pressure, you can empty that container by having a nap. And finally, you can delay that sleep pressure by using caffeine to mask how sleepy you are until it wears off. So here are my top tips to take away if you want a clear starting point for what would be good practice. Number 1, wake up and go to sleep at the same time every day. This is fabulous for making sure that you've got enough sleep pressure at the end of the day, and it complements your circadian rhythm fabulously. So it's a double whammy with that one. A great place to start. Number 2, do at least 30 minutes of movement every day. Again, it's a double whammy. Not only will it help you get great sleep pressure, but it can help you be healthy in all sorts of ways as well. Number 3, keep naps under 30 minutes and don't do it within 6 hours of bedtime. This makes sure that your container isn't too light when you want to drift off. And finally, number 4, avoid caffeine within 8 hours of going to bed. This makes sure that most of it has got out of your system before you try and drift off. And make sure that your brain doesn't get tricked into thinking that you need less sleep than you actually do need. Now, with napping and caffeine, I've actually done other videos on those which are a little bit more extensive on what is actually going on and how to be strategic with them, because they are both very useful for giving you energy throughout the day, but you've got to be careful. So if you want to watch those videos, I'll put the link in the bio for them as well. And that is that. As I said at the start, this system is foundational to sleep, so it's really important that you know all about it. This is therefore a very big milestone in your sleep optimization journey. If you try any of that advice that I've just given you, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Leave me a comment or send me a message. I get very excited to hear about any wins. And if you find that actually sleep pressure isn't the problem and your circadian rhythm is in check, you're keeping a consistent routine, then if you're still struggling with sleep, there's a likelihood that it could be stress related. That's another system that is foundational to getting great sleep. So I'll put a link in the caption for a video all about stress to make sure that you understand what's going on there and how to work with it if that sounds like you. If you've enjoyed today and would like even more content, I post short form content on TikTok and Instagram, which is a little bit more bite-sized and often quite silly if you like sleepy silliness. And otherwise, I run workshops virtually or in person for businesses and communities. If that's something that you'd like to learn more about for you and your people, I would absolutely love to chat to you about it. Anyway, that's that. Thank you so much for coming along today and engaging throughout. Sweet dreams as always, and I shall see you next time.